be here in Auckland with you. Can you tell me a bit about your path into wine? Because your first career was as a history teacher. How have you ended up as a wine writer?
Very briefly. Enjoyed wine from probably 8 or 9 years old, from the family trips to Calais, and my dad desperately trying to find great French wine for less than £1, and started off with trying sips of those at the table, and port and 7-Up in Mallorca and so forth. By the time I was 16, I was quite interested, and for my 18th birthday my mate bought me a bottle of Kalimna Bin 28. So I was quite interested, went to university, got the keys to the university cellar, and when everybody else was buying 8 cans of beer for £10, I realised I could get a really good bottle of wine for that and start to learn. Umdanad through my early 20s about what I was going to do. Had studied history, got a history master's, then did the obvious thing and got a PGCE. And I taught for a sixth form college for a year, and after that year my teaching career sort of came to an end because a load of us were made redundant, and I made the obvious jump from teaching to alcohol. I literally went into an Oddbins to buy a bottle of Viborova vodka to celebrate being made redundant. Woke up the next day with a third of a bottle left and an application form for Oddbins lying next to the bottle, and it really was as literal as that. Spent a year in the shops, got into head office, was involved in training, started to build a little bit on bringing the teaching into the wine. Got the diploma in 2001 while still sort of working at Oddbins, and did after a short spell at Sainsbury's, ended up working outside the wine industry for a couple of years, but teaching and training and lecturing through the sort of early 2000s. And during that time, I wasn't writing, but I was, as I say, teaching, and was part of the Association of Wine Educators during that period.
Excellent.
In 2009, I was having a little spell back in Oddbins and got approached by Andrew Eakin to set up Bottle Apostle. Worked for them till 2013, and then took a mid-career break, wanted to freshen up a bit, and did the postgraduate diploma in viticulture and enology at Lincoln University in New Zealand. And then after a year working for wineries, I've ended up at Wine Searcher, initially for a year working on the database, and then moved into wine writing for them a couple of years ago.
Excellent. So full circle.
Yeah.
And you've...
my CV has to be edited if I have to show it to anybody.
And you've had so many different disciplines in wine. What would you say really informs your wine writing? Do you kind of take a historical perspective? Do you take a kind of winemaker perspective? What would you say are the main influences?
I think it's some of the writing disciplines and the way approach to ideas from the history, and trying to be informative in the way that I tried to be when I was teaching. So I do, when I'm writing about wine, I do try to get a thesis in there or an idea going through, and try and get a real point and a real thread to what I'm doing.
Excellent. And do you have any kind of regions or aspects of stories that really interest you? Would you say that there's, I don't know, a period in time, or is there a winemaking practice or approach that really interests you?
I like a lot of the history. I like finding out why a region has prospered in whereas another hasn't. I like that holistic thing of looking at the history and the politics and the socio-economics along with the terroir and the climate issues. Auckland's a great example of that, and we could you could talk at length about that. You're going to have the misfortune of me rabbiting on about it as we drive up to Kumu. You know, and I just love that the fact that wine is such a sort of multidisciplinary subject. Anything but the chemistry, really. As long as I don't have to talk about chemistry.
Even though you opted to study that.
Well, I had to do Chemistry 101 and basically sat next to someone very clever in all the lectures, then went to the exam needing 4 out of 45 to pass and got 8. So that tells you about my ability with chemistry. I tried learning all the chains and the diagrams and everything, and yeah, just fell asleep. Yeah.
Great, but you've been living in Auckland then since 2013?
No, 2013
Sorry, New Zealand,
studying,
I meant.
2014 still living based around Christchurch. Came up in early 2015, and literally immigration had told me one job or leave, and I happened to know Wink Lorch, was working at Wine Searcher at the time, doing maternity cover for Rebecca Gibb. And so I phoned her as the first thing I did and said, anything up there? And she encouraged me to email. That was a Wednesday, and by the Friday I had a verbal offer. So I'd studied. I actually did 4 or 5 months in the vineyards in Central Otago, which was just after I studied, and then worked the rest of 2014. I hadn't thought about where I was going to go next. That was going to be the finite thing, probably thinking France or Germany. But within 3 days of sitting down, I'd had a job offer and was told 4 weeks' time you've got to be up in Auckland. So I never got the chance to really think things through. I just ended up here. And with that short notice, I literally moved to 40 seconds away from where I worked, and I've managed to extend it in increments out to a 10-minute drive away from where I work. So it's fair, you know.
Keep it nice and local. And what do you enjoy about living here in New Zealand, and what excites you about the Kiwi wine scene as it is today?
I think I think what I enjoy about living here maybe isn't the first factors are not the things tied up with the wine. It is the beaches and the hikes and getting, you know, the amazing surroundings that, you know, and the general sort of relaxed lifestyle, even though sometimes you want to bang people's heads together and tell them to get a move on. But so it is probably that side of it. The wine side, there's just so many surprises. It just challenges your preconceptions. You know, when I worked for Bottle Apostle, we had half a dozen Kiwi wines. That was what we had room for. That was what made sense. And so, you know, seeing the depth of everything here, and some of the wines that just don't have export volumes, made in tiny quantities. There's just so much surprise. You get to appreciate that big companies are making small volume wines from a hectare of an unusual grape. We're drinking Grüne Veltliner here from Babich, and there's lots of individually exciting wines from bigger producers. There are wines that I'd never heard of, from areas I'd never heard of. One of the key big surprises has probably been the Bordeaux blends from around Auckland. You know, some of these are from vineyards that have recently disappeared because of housing pressure. You've got Paruri Hills out at Clevedon. You've got the wines up at Matakana. I'd never realised that these wines were made. I knew about Waiheke, but I never knew that these still existed, and I've been really impressed with those. And the best ones really stand up to anything Tuscany can do.
Excellent. That's a good tip to share. And what do you hope to see in the future here? What developments do you think are particularly important for the future in New Zealand's wine scene?
It's a difficult one in the sense that they've got, you know, a lot of this is for them is about export markets, and you want to. The geek wants to see some diversity in the export markets and start to see new grapes come on. But at the same time, we have to realise that they're still breaking Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc in export markets. They're still finding, you know, new places to sell that, and you know, USA is still cottoning on to that. So you have to be realistic about sort of predictions and expectations. But I'd love to see with Albarino develop a bit more, maybe find some new coastal sites, and it'd be interesting to see maybe a secondary red grape variety in Central Otago, really give them some variety. I don't think they need it yet because of volumes and so on. They're still pushing brand Central Otago Pinot. There's still some movement for that. But yeah, I think it's grape varieties and really fitting grape varieties to regions and finding some new specialities for them.
Fantastic. And my last question is kind of, what's the future of Tom Jarvis? So in your career, you've gone through so many different reincarnations. You've just been shortlisted for a Rhoda Award as a writer. What's going to happen? What's your kind of next project? What should we be looking out for in the future from you?
I'm not just saying this. I'm not just saying this because I'm on film and someone might be watching, but I enjoy working for Wine Searcher, and it has a great advantage of being a brand name that quite a lot of people know. For the last year or two, immigration rules have meant that I haven't been able to do anything on the side or have special projects, and so two things have happened that are good for me. One is the shortlisting for the Louis Roederer, and that's just come at a time where I've got residency here. And residency means that immigration won't be looking at my bank account to see whether I'm getting multiple income streams. It's a really practical, nitty-gritty thing, but it just means that I can do my 9-to-5 job, enjoy it, and just do one or two projects outside of that with their sort of approval and knowledge, and just keep life really interesting. So that's the immediate plan. Excellent. For the next couple of years.
And always with a foot in education as well?
I haven't, since I've been here, I haven't done much teaching and training. I've run some wine events as a salesperson and really enjoyed them. And I did a handful of lectures and back at Lincoln and ran some tastings there. So that will certainly be something that I would look to get back into now that doing so won't get me chucked out of the country.
Great, so watch this space from New Zealand. Thank you very much.